to the Vol Excel. Thank you for joining me. Very interesting information has been relayed by Mr. Gonsalves during this interview with Banfield on News Nation pertaining to grand jury documents, the state of Kaylee'S Gonsalves, Maddie Mogan, Xana, Coronado, and what Dylan saw. As I had always suspected, that somebody saw something before the 911 call. And you will hear that information here in this commentary. Like, share, subscribe, drop your comments below this video, take the polls on my community page. And if you'd like to donate to this great network, $McGangie 129 Cash App. Welcome to the Vault Excel, News Nation, Mr. Source.
Like business, we're laser focused on learning every detail and filling in every blank about a gripping true crime case. But sometimes in this process, our hearts just get broken all over again each time we learn something new. And so it is with the University of Idaho murders. Since the case moved to Boise with a different judge, we've seen a blizzard of unsealed, unredacted court filings and a regular supply of details and disclosures, even some bombshells. And tonight, two absolutely stunning revelations about the surviving housemates texting and talking in the wee hours of November 13th, 2022. Also a rare peek into some grand jury testimony, something we don't often get to see. We knew that Dylan Mortensen, a surviving roommate, had texted an Uber driver just after 2 o'clock in the morning. That's about 2 hours before the murders happened. But now we know that she and three of her roommates, Bethany, Kaylee, and Maddie, all of whom had just arrived home from a night out, had actually contemplated going out again. The court document reads, and I quote, "At approximately 2 a.m., they met up in Kaylee's bedroom and talked for a while before going to bed. The fifth roommate, Xana Coronado, who was out with her boyfriend Ethan Chapin, was not home yet. The roommates debated going out to the food truck for late night snack, prompting Dylan to send a text at 2:10 a.m. to an Uber driver she knew to see if he was driving. Ultimately, however, the girls decided to just go to bed." Man, that brings to mind a lot of what ifs, doesn't it? What if they'd gone back out? What if they just decided, let's go, let's do it, it's 2 a.m., let's go get more food? Might that have changed the course of history on that horrible?
Would it have changed? I don't think so. Korberger was he intended to harm these girls. He had been stalking this house from information that we have heard, from documents, Mr. Gonsalves, the past 2.5 years. Buying a knife, even before getting to the Pacific Northwest school. Don't know if he intended to, if he bought that knife knowing he had already been accepted to the school. I don't really know. I'm just waiting for the details to come out. But the point is, when he got to Washington State, he became fixated on these girls. As I said, don't know if he became fixated on them before he even got accepted to the school. Did he find them on social media and then apply to a school? So there's a lot of questions I have pertaining to that information as well. But the point is, once he touched down, these young ladies became his focus, which is so bizarre considering the school is 15 minutes away, Washington State from Idaho. But they became his focus. He's been out to that house really 14 times, possibly even more. But you count the 12 times on data and the 2 times returning to kill the kids, allegedly, and then returning back to the house at 9 a.m. So he had been out there way past numerous times, which makes no sense because you don't know anybody out there. You're not friends with anybody out there. You're not friends with these kids. So what are you doing out there? So I don't think anything would have changed if they had went to the food truck. They weren't going to spend the night at the food truck. They would have just went, got the food, came back, or ordered DoorDash or something, ate the food at the house. So either way, he went out there to unalive these kids. And he would have lied and waited until he thought somebody walked in that house. His targets walked in the house. That's why he went out there. And I think he had been out there for at least an hour or more, because it doesn't take that long to get from Washington State to that residence. So he had been circling, waiting on the opportunity to unalive these kids. waiting for the perfect moment. So I don't think a 2 o'clock food truck run would have prevented Mr. Korberger from unaliving these girls.
Horrifying night. Of course, there is a good chance that they popped back out to that food trunk that they still would have been home before the knife-wielding intruder, allegedly Brian Kohberger, broke in and killed Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan. But we will never know. And that brings me to the second revelation. We knew about Dylan and Bethany's frantic text messaging between 4:22 a.m. and 4:26 a.m. when Dylan tells Bethany that nobody will answer their phones and that she's afraid because she saw someone in a ski mask. And we knew that Dylan then ran down to Bethany's room on the ground floor of the 3-level house. But the court documents now reveal a brand new fact that we never knew. And it is, honestly, it is something horrifying. Again, Dylan again tried calling Kaylee and Xana, but neither responded. Dylan then exited her room and began running towards Bethany's bedroom. On her way, she noticed Xana lying on the floor of her bedroom with her head towards the wall and her feet towards the door. Dylan thought Xana was drunk. Once Dylan arrived downstairs at Bethany's room, they locked the door and both made additional unanswered calls to the other roommates.
So now we get confirmation that Dylan did see Xana passed out in the floor. So now we have to ask, was it normal for Xana to be passed out? For Dylan to not inquire to see how the girl was doing, not to go over to her, touch her, hey, wake up, go get in your bed. So that's why you have to ask about the dynamics of the relationships between all of the girls, because all that matters. And as Mr. Gonzalez has been saying, that a lot of people being judgmental, well, we're just looking at what you're telling us. And people are going to ask questions. I'm not here to promote any conspiracies. I'm here just to ask the questions. If I was friendly enough with this person, I'm living in their house, I got their telephone number, I'm calling them, wouldn't I inquire when I see them passed out? Like, okay, damn, I've never seen that before. Never seen her passed out like this before in the doorway. If I was a friend, as I'll say it, a true friend, wouldn't I go over there maybe and tell her, hey, you need to get up, get in the bed? Or I'm used to people being passed out, different roommates, and I just walk by and keep it moving. See, everything's about interpretation.
Hours passed, and at 11:50 a.m. the next morning, 6 minutes before the 911 call that you have heard on this program, Dylan called her friends, Emily Aland and Hunter Johnson, because she was too afraid to go upstairs by herself. And the court filing reads, Emily and Hunter met Dylan and Bethany at the bottom floor of the house. Together, Dylan, Bethany, and Hunter started to walk up the stairs to the second floor. When they reached the second floor, Hunter went to the kitchen to grab a kitchen knife. Now, this next part is from Dylan's grand jury.
Now, see, that makes no sense, because when you go up those stairs, you're in the living room, and Xana's room will be to your right, coming around that partition wall. Why would you go to the kitchen to get a knife? Stay woke, everybody. So that means Hunter feared that something wasn't right when looking at Xana lying in the floor. Now, mind you, this is his first time going in the house, allegedly. So why would he be grabbing a knife from the kitchen before even going over to the room to inquire what the hell went on in the room? So I always said nobody pays attention, but then we're judged because we're asking questions. So this even sounds even more crazy. That's the one put in the comment section below this video. That's the first thing you would think to do, is go get a knife from the kitchen. So that would lead you to believe these two girls, you knew something wasn't right as well. And you stayed in that house the entire time, not even caring about the roommate or your own safety, because you've proven that you feared for your safety and that something was not right in that house because you wouldn't call 2 other people. So you stayed in this house where 2 people are dead upstairs and dead on the second floor. 4 people are dead and you are sleeping in your bed, and you all could not have gotten that many hours of sleep because we learned that you were up texting at 7 a.m. doing various things on your phone. But yet something still made you say to yourself when you decided to keep calling all these different people, parents, friends, something happened upstairs. Let me go call Emily, Hunter. So this proves that you had to have known something wasn't right. This is still bizarre to me. I don't care what Mr. Gonsalves says. I don't care what anybody else says. This is my opinion. I always said this shit never made no sense. And it wasn't to say that these girls were involved in any way. It just didn't make no sense. And so even the 911 call, some people may think it adds up. It don't add up. Because as someone said in the comment section below this video, you talking to the dispatcher, you still never told that woman, hey, they're dead up there. I don't need to go back and check their pulse. Checkmate. I don't need to go check their pulse. You remember the dispatcher telling them that? I want you to go back in there. Well, that was the purpose of them running out. It's because they believe those kids were dead. But yet when they talk to the dispatcher, they never confirm, hey, they're dead. We see blood. Help me understand how you didn't see blood. And these children were hacked to damn death. Excuse my language. All four. All four. And yet in the dispatch call, there's no conversation. Just everybody passing the phone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And nobody's telling the truth. Hey, we've been in the house already. These two are dead in there. And even in that phone call, Hunter isn't even mentioned until almost at the end of that 3-minute phone call, which makes no sense either. Which makes no sense either.
Jury testimony, when Hunter came back out, Dylan said, quote, she saw Xana again for a split second, and this is Dylan talking, and just started bawling because she thought she had just like, I don't even know. I thought maybe she was still just drunk and all asleep on the floor. Bethany also saw Xana lying on the floor. Hunter told Dylan and Bethany to, quote, get out. Emily, who had started up the stairs, also turned around after Hunter instructed her not to come any further.
There's your proof right there. Emily wasn't even up there with them, allegedly. So why did she stay down on the bottom level? Stay woke, everybody. Emily didn't go up the stairs because she knew something wasn't right either. You know why she knew something wasn't right? Because you can smell death. Stay woke. If heat is on in the house, death is going to permeate. Blood is going to permeate. Blood smells like iron. I said this 1,000 times in my commentary. How could you not have smelled death on a cold, cold morning and you have heat running? And even if it was air conditioning, death is still death. The children have been lying dead for some time. So Emily doesn't go to the stairs, up the stairs. So we only have Hunter, Dylan, and Bethany upstairs. He goes to get a knife first, even before going back to the room where Xana is lying out, where you can see. But at some point, he tells them to get out, get out. Now, what did Bethany and Dylan think that meant? Common sense would say, okay, this is a worst case scenario. This is not somebody drunk. But yet, when you listen to the dispatch call, everybody's talking in circles, talking over each other, when there is no mention of dead people, which is bizarre to me. You don't mention they're dead. You don't say, I think they're dead. I see blood. I smell death, nothing. So nobody can get mad at the dispatcher because she was doing her job by saying, I need one person to talk at a time. Stop passing the phone around. And these people were just in there with dead people. Put it on paper now. Make it make sense. Someone is lying out of a doorway. Hunter thinks to first go get a knife, which meant he had to have some fear when he got to that living room and saw her lying there. Stay woke now.
They both went outside shortly afterwards, and Hunter exited the house and then told them to call 911. He was pale, white, and mentioned something about someone being unconscious. You can hear a lot of that, you know.
Someone's unconscious. You mean someone's dead? This makes no sense to me. How these kids could not just say it on the 911 call. They are dead. They're dead. I smell death. They're dead. It's bizarre to me.
You can hear a lot of it on the 911 call. We just envisioned that the banging and the calling out, Xana, Ethan was at the bedroom door, but it may not have. It may have been down the hall and around the corner at the stairs. This is where I'm going to stop and bring in Steve Gonzalez. Steve is Kaylee Gonzalez's father. He's been a regular guest on the...
Well, I'm going to mention that as well, Miss Banfield. That makes no sense either. Why am I calling their names out when I can see the girl lying in the floor and her feet are out of the door? That meant he was scared to go over to the door, assumingly. Just make it all make sense now. Let's make it make sense. Why are you calling their names out when you can see one of them, which is Xana, her feet are toward the door, out? So why am I calling her name when I could just walk over to her? Shake her foot, shake her leg. Get up, get up, get up. And I think by the time I'm shaking her leg, I would notice Ethan somewhere in the room. So I woke everybody. I'm woke. This whole conversation still don't make no sense, even with these details being revealed. I always thought that one of these girls saw one of these kids or more dead. And really, you can't see one without seeing the other person dead, because all of the children were dead in the rooms together. Kaylee and Maddie are dead together in a bed, and Xana is dead on the floor, and Ethan's in there dead. So how you gonna see one and don't see the other? There's no need in calling their names out. For what? The only reason why you would call their names out is because you were scared to go over to Xana, and you possibly thought she was dead, and you were too scared to go over there. You had to have been scared, because why would you go get a knife from the kitchen before even going over to her room? Make it make sense?
The program. Steve, these were details that I found astounding. They seemed to put into place more details of a very confusing picture of what happened that night. And I often stop and I think about you and the other parents, and whether you get a heads up that this stuff is coming, whether you have someone who sits down with you and goes through it and helps you to sort through it. How do you receive this kind of information?
Brief intermission, everybody. Very sad information, in my opinion. Everything that I had already thought about this case and the 911 call, I knew it never made sense when it was first repeated. Somebody put out the rumor, one of the girls' roommates were passed out. It was never the roommates passed out. They had already seen Xana passed out inside of the house. And I don't know who started that rumor, but this is why you can't believe everything that you hear on the internet.
We normally get an email beforehand. We work back and forth. I don't think either party really had an understanding of how to really construct something where you can share information but not too much information. But the communication's gotten a lot better. I really like these guys. I mean, I really care about that those people and all the work that they've done. So I think they've always tried to work towards communication, but I'm sure they're very busy, and it's not easy to always remember to keep us in the loop.
It was a surprise to me, Steve, to hear this detail that Bethany got a glimpse down the hall of what now appears to be Xana's open bedroom door, and Xana lying inside that bedroom door, and ran downstairs to Bethany's room. And then at one point, Bethany also saw that same image. But it's sort of just, it's flummoxing to think that they called friends, they called 911 before anybody sort of went to investigate what was happening in that bedroom.
Exactly.
With the door now open. We always assumed that it was closed and they couldn't get past it.
Yeah, that's definitely a puzzling part of it. But I always assume, you have somebody who's scared, girl, slightly, intoxicated. My own daughter, when my son was playing a prank on her, acting like he was being attacked, him and his mom, Kaylee ran upstairs and hid under the bed and called me at work. So when people are scared, they're young. They don't think the same way as a grown adult does. And I think they were just thinking that something bad had happened, but they didn't want to believe it. They didn't.
Now imagine a brother playing a prank on his family, his sister, Kaylee, and then years later, your sister is brutally bludgeoned in her bedroom with her friend Maddie. That's a lot to digest. See, sometimes you can speak things into existence. I know a lot of people probably don't believe in that, but it's the universe. That's why it's in the scripture. You have to be careful what you speak on, what you talk about, the energy you allow in your orbit, going around certain elements, people, because you can speak things into existence. You can bring negative energy. Just imagine that. Playing a cruel prank on this young lady as a child, young man, I don't know how old he was. And then years later, your sister's brutally bludgeoned in her own bed or her friend's bedroom. And so what was a prank? Kaylee ended up having to fight for her life in real life in a bed with her best friend. Imagine that. That's scary as hell. And Mr. Gonsalves really is dancing around this conversation with Banfield because he feels like nobody should be saying anything negative about the roommates. Yeah, it's puzzling. I'm surprised he even said that. It is puzzling. It is puzzling. Because the 911 call, as many people are saying, does not reflect. They're saying allegedly what was said to the grand jury. Because you don't hear any conversation about the description of the victims, Xana and Ethan, as being bludgeoned. And it's really disrespectful to the dead to keep saying they're unconscious. They're unconscious. They're unconscious. They're dead. And I just still don't understand the 911 call. I don't understand this girl walking by a dead person and don't even go over there and check on her. That's why I say, does Xana normally pass out drunk with her feet toward the door, out the door? Oh, she's just drunk. Let me go. Let me go on downstairs. And then when you get on the 911 call, you're just going over and over and over, repeating something strange, a guy in a mask. But the dispatcher don't want to hear that. She wants to hear what's going on at that time. So that's what's all baffling, is that you're holding on to this masked man story all the way up until almost noon, calling other people over to the house when you feared something wasn't right, and yet you never got up to check, allegedly. And I've always said that if they did go check and went in those rooms, second and third floor, they would take that secret to the grave. Because they know how it would look if they ever repeated, yeah, I went up there and saw Ethan and Xana dead, and I did nothing. I crawled to the 3rd floor and saw Maddie and Kaylee dead, and I did nothing. Now imagine that. Imagine that. They would never tell that.
They weren't really prepared to mentally accept what was happening, and I totally understand that, because it's not something that we're in Idaho. It's not something that is common. It's not even, it's just unheard of. So I chalk it up to that, and I know that there's a lot of forensic, and there's a lot, these girls had their phones on me. I already said way back in the day that you could tell upstairs and downstairs. This is all laid out. Every step has been retraced. So it did make a difference in the bigger picture. And I've always said that there could be blessings for late calls as well too.
Yeah. It's also just so jarring to get the detail that the girls were all together up in your daughter's room, chatting about, let's all go out again, 2:00 in the morning, let's go back to the food truck. And I'm not sure if you heard how I laid it out at the top of the show, but all I can think of is the what ifs, if they had actually decided to go. And I'm wondering how you're processing that information.
Brief intermission. Girls contemplated going back out. Dylan called a driver, Uber driver that she knew of. Obviously, I guess she didn't get an answer, so they didn't go back out. And we did learn that Xana ended up calling for food herself when she and Ethan returned back to the house. Disturbing information. The whole situation is disturbing.
I knew a little bit of the details about that. And, I don't even talk about some of it just because I don't want to hurt some of the people, that are involved in this. If, certain people would have got picked up phones, all those type of things, those are what ifs. And I think what it really goes to your audience is these girls are best friends.
Well, who are you speaking of now, Mr. Gonzalez? Because you've been very highly critical of law enforcement and them not keeping you and the wife and family in the loop naturally to the open investigation at that time. So they weren't going to tell you things. And then too, you like talking to the media and talking to the news. You're not somebody they would want to be giving information to, as so the information wouldn't get leaked to the public. That's just common sense. It's common sense. No disrespect to you and your family, but they were investigating a crime. And you have stayed in the media talking about your child, which is nothing wrong with that. But common sense should tell you, police, detectives know, can't tell him anything. He'll possibly tell it. So without getting information from the grand jury and the documents, and he's sharing information here in this commentary, but you can see he's still critical. So he's speaking of people who didn't answer their phone. Who are you speaking of? Who are you talking about? I don't understand what you're saying. Are you talking about detectives you've called? Who are you speaking of? Because the kids were dead. So the only people that were alive were Dylan and Bethany. So are you talking about people that they called that didn't answer? If it's late in the morning, 3, 4 in the morning, most people aren't going to answer their cell phones. So I don't know who you're speaking of. I have no idea.
Friends. And even the last moments of my daughter and Maddie's, they were surrounded with friends. And they were in their beds. So just keep that in mind, because there's going to be probably some people are going to try to drag these surviving people through the mud. And up to their very last moments, they were hanging out with these, the people who passed away, planning on doing something fun. And my daughter came down there to hang out with one of those girls, and that's the reality of it. That's the truth of it, not some of the speculation that you're going to eventually hear about.
Did you hear that? My daughter went down there to hang out with one of the girls. So I'm assuming that would be Maddie. Very interesting. And this is not to promote any conspiracies, but it's laying out what many of us thought, that it was always Kaylee and Maddie who were the best of friends, the better of friends, even though all of them lived in the house together before Kaylee left this home for good. But you said it out of your own mouth. She went there to hang with one of her friends. Wow. Although many would assume Kaylee was friends with all of the girls. Bethany, Dylan, and Xana. Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, and shame on those who have cast aspersions on these two surviving
Well,
inmates.
we're human,
Have
Banfield.
been to hell and back. They're still there. They're not back. And how anyone could set upon them with ridiculous conspiracy theories is beyond the pale. There was something that you mentioned, I think a couple of days ago in an interview that sort of stood out to me. And that was that I think you had a chance to speak with the coroner and got a detail about one of the injuries that your daughter suffered at the hands of this killer. I think it was a punch to the face. Can you tell me what it is that you learned?
I don't go into all the details on it because I want the court to bring it out. I want them to do it. But yes, I feel 2.5 years. The defense has a strategy to have everybody forget, and I'm here to make sure they don't forget. So when I do have to let stuff out, it's because I don't want people to forget that we have a monster. And yes, one of the girls was a little more intoxicated. He was able to go after that. Maddie May first, and my daughter woke up, and he struck her multiple times, and broke her nose. And yeah, and there's a little bit more details to that, but I leave that to them in case that's something pertinent for them to know and to let them release it. But I'm not going to let anyone forget about what this monster did. And I'll leave it at that.
Disturbing information. Two friends in the bed together, Maddie, Kaylee. He says that one was more inebriated, so I'm assuming he's talking about Maddie. Korberger, if he's the suspect, you believe he's the suspect, stabbing this young lady, Maddie. Kaylee wakes up, so he punches her. So this is interesting to think about. A man wielding a knife and also now punching another victim in the same bed. Naturally to subdue her so she doesn't try to fight him and or escape because she's trapped in a corner, Kaylee. I can't imagine what either of these children went through, but this is horrific, as I just said. Being in a bed cornered, he's stabbing your friend or has stabbed your friend. You wake up, I guess, in the commission of the stabbing, and then he punches you because he has to subdue you. This is a terrible, terrible crime because I can't imagine being stabbed, period, and then being in a corner trap, can't get out and see that he stabbed my friend, and now he's punching me to subdue me. This is horrific. And actually, they're going to play this out in court, how the bed was set up, the room, the positioning of the children in the bed, who was unalive first. You will hear that here in this commentary, who was unalive first. Naturally, you can use deduction, who was unalive first, and what these girls went through in that bedroom, small room. But you can see the violence of the killer, stabbing the victims and now punching one in the face and broke Kaylee Gonzalez's nose. Wow. What else did he do to these victims? I've also been curious about that because we learned that there was no sexual assault of the female victims. But it's not to say he didn't do anything creepy, if you get my drift. While in there, taking any type of tokens, souvenirs from the victims. Did this Mr. Korberger take any souvenirs from the girls' rooms and of the house, from the house?
But they were able to give you that detail that that the killer killed Maddie first and then went after Kaylee second?
Correct.
You can turn.
Brief intermission, everybody. So we learned that Maddie Mae was unalive first, then Kaylee. Brutal. He went to the second floor and unalived Xana and Ethan. All while two roommates were alive in the house on the first floor, second and first floor. Dylan on the second, facing the kitchen, and Bethany on the bottom level.
I think there's a lot of forensics that we're going to learn in this trial. I hope you're going to be okay, you and Christy, when it comes time for those testimony days. The last thing I wanted to ask you about, Steve, is that you've learned that Brian Korberger called out from work the day after these murders. What do you know about that, and how did you hear this?
There's a thing called the Brown Alley I've heard about. I've spoken because I was local, because I came out, some people reached out to me. This individual was an employee of WSU. And from there, I learned of some details. So, yeah, there was an investigation, an HR investigation, and I don't know all the details about it, but I do know these girls felt very creeped out. And they talked to people in power, and they said, document it, and they started documenting it. And that's how we know that one of the days, the day after he took that photo where he's acting like he's super confident, got away with murder. It doesn't look sick to me at all. You guys can look at it, everyone, your audience can go look at it themselves. And I heard that's the only time he ever called in sick as well.
Wow.
That's an unbelievable detail. Steve, I always am very appreciative that you take the time to speak with us. I'm glad you keep your daughters memory alive and the story alive as well. It's important that nobody forget what happened. Thank you again for this.
Very interesting
We're
here.
going to learn in this trial. I hope you're going to be okay.
We're going to go back to that picture of Mr. Korberger. Okay. He learned from someone at the school that Mr. Korberger did not attend class work. Please check out my shorts on this commentary. It's very interesting. Gives a thumbs up in a photograph in a bathroom, his bathroom, allegedly. Like, yeah, I did that. You don't know what I did, but I did that. I killed those kids in Idaho, right next door to Washington State. And boy, are you all gonna find out what I did. You look at these photographs of Korberger, he doesn't look like possibly that type of guy that would do that, but that's always the point. Who is the type? Okay. Who is the type? Hold on, everybody. I'm trying to get a caption of the picture. One second. Right there. The old saying about a picture's worth 1,000 words. Indeed. This is a man who has been arrested, arraigned, charged with 4 brutal slayings in Idaho. 4 college students were friends. 2 he did not harm, and I don't think he had any intention. And it's not to offend anyone, but I don't call them survivors because I don't believe he intended to hurt them. You walk right by Dylan. Those are our own words. So I don't consider them survivors. As I said, it's not to be disrespectful, but I don't think he had any intention of hurting them. He had a targets, and he killed who he wanted to kill. Now, the other 2, happenstance, whichever 2 you want to believe he wanted or one he wanted, either way, they're not here. We can only learn from notes he kept, data, phone, computer, iPad, his movements, GPS, conversations with other students, people who knew him. That's all you have because he's not going to talk during court. And one thing I heard said the other day in commentary that I didn't think about, the possible reason why Mr. Korberger never entered in a not guilty plea and the judge had to put in the plea on his own for Mr. Korberger is because he doesn't want his voice on record. Very interesting information. It kind of blew my mind. Mr. Korberger, is that the reason why you won't speak in court and you have nodded yes, no. So I do believe your voice has been recorded in court. But as far as not saying, I'm not guilty, blah, 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 is it that you really don't want your voice, you don't want conversations of your voice recorded? Because Dylan believes she heard someone say, I'm going to help you. We don't know if that was you or that was Ethan talking to Xana when she was crying out after being brutally stabbed. But I thought that was an interesting thought. Maybe that's why Korberger didn't enter his own plea. He didn't want his voice on record. Very interesting. Thumbs up. He's looking pale and clammy to me here. Perhaps puts a dress shirt on as if he's going somewhere, which was nowhere. That was a Sunday. Where was he going? Nowhere. Calls in sick. Never called in sick before. Never called in sick before. Until after these brutal slayings. Did you find that interesting? Mr. Korberger, were you really sick? You could not go to class work? Are you the perpetrator of these murders? Mr. Korberger is facing the death penalty if indeed found guilty by 12 members of a jury. And I do believe he's the culprit. I believe law enforcement has done their job. I believe they have the correct person. I do believe he will be found guilty. And I do hope that he is put down like a rabid dog. Because nobody deserves to walk around after hunting people down like animals, watching them, stalking them, messaging, don't get their way, and decide to sit outside their house and wait for them to go to sleep, and then enter their home, breaking and entering, and brutally murder them, and then leave two untouched for whatever reason. Make it make sense. Because he's watched his house. He knows who lives in his house. He has seen the company coming in and out of this house. He knows they also kept male company, and he did not care. That shows you how brazen and callous he is. And he is a violent person. You're stabbing one, you're punching the other one. He's violent, angry. And this is possibly because one of the girls did not respond, which we learned it was Maddie that he messaged. She didn't respond back, which is her right. You don't have to respond to people in your messenger on IG or Facebook. That is your choice, your preference. But nobody has the right to unalive you because you didn't respond. You say hello, hi, how are you? I think you're pretty. Whatever he said to her, she didn't respond. So how many times did he reach out to her? Was she the target? Was she the target? So then if she was the target, then how did Xana and Ethan end up dead? Because he easily could have killed those two girls upstairs on the third floor, walked downstairs, and walked into the kitchen and back out the glass door. Make it make sense. What was the purpose of walking around to the left side, walk out of that kitchen, turn left, and walk down that hall to Xana's room? Makes no sense if Maddie was the target. So that's why none of this makes any sense, really. You can say he liked a lot of Maddie's pictures. He liked a lot of Kaylee'S pictures. Which is whomever pictures he liked the most, Maddie's, okay? So follow with me. He liked. Killed her and the girl because they're both in the same bed, 2 for 1. All he had to do was walk out. So why did he go down those stairs and then turn to the left out of the kitchen to go to Xana's room? Makes me wonder if those two were up, Xana and Ethan. They're making noise. He can hear them talking. Maybe they hear some noise. Maybe he heard them in the midst of him killing these kids upstairs on the third floor. Oh, I better go handle those two because they're up. They may come down, confront me, or I bump into them. Or maybe that's exactly what happened. He came down the stairs, bumped into one of them in the kitchen. A chase went on, chased them around that corner, and stabbed them both. So he's a violent guy. He's a strong guy because Ethan was a big guy. Ethan was a big guy. It's not to say, he was a fighter even for his size, but you're just thinking to yourself, he's a big guy. Possibly he could have overpowered Mr. Korberger and somebody could have been saved. But sadly, that did not happen. He overpowered Xana and Ethan as well. That's a lot to digest. So why did he unalive these two, Xana and Ethan, if his target was Maddie? Make it make sense. As I said, possibly they were up. We also said we heard Dylan say in the documents that coming from Xana's room, somebody said, I think somebody's here. Now, we don't know if that was one of the DoorDash delivery, or if it was a commotion of him in the house, walking up the stairs, brutally stabbing those kids upstairs. Some of us are thinking, hell, it couldn't have been quiet, murdering 2 people upstairs on the 3rd floor. So then you have to ask that question, did they scream? So if they screamed, then that means Dylan didn't hear that, Bethany didn't hear that, Xana and Ethan didn't hear that. These girls screaming. Because I would assume he's a heavy-footed person. So he's gonna make noise going up the stairs, possibly, going in the room, rushing in there, bum rushing in there, don't know if the door was closed or locked. You gotta ask all those questions. Did he break the door in? Did the girls normally sleep with their doors locked? Doors closed? See, lots of questions. And all that's gonna matter in what you can hear in the house. So if the doors were locked, he would have had to break the doors open. So were the doors locked? 3rd floor, Maddie's room. Or she left it locked She left it closed but unlocked. Left it open, don't know. Was the dog barking the entire time while this fiasco was going on up there? This brutal slaying, 3rd floor. Lots of questions. When did the dog finally settle down? And once again, if Maddie was his target, why did he kill Ethan and Xana? Were they up? Did they confront him coming down the stairs? Did they go look to see what was going on upstairs? Lots of questions. And we'll never get the truth because Mr. Korberger is never going to tell what actually happened in that house on King Road. He's going to carry that secret to the grave, as most killers do, because they want something private for themselves, but they don't want to share it with the world. Now, somewhere down the road, when a killer has been sentenced, life, death, they eventually give interviews and they talk. And they decide to tell the truth about what happened the fateful day, night, afternoon, when they unalived a persons. If Korberger is found guilty, perhaps he will come out of his slumber and he will talk to someone, a reporter, and he will tell the truth about what happened in that house. Who his target was, why he targeted that person, when did he come to target the person, who he had been reaching out to, was he offended that he didn't get a response, when did he decide he wanted to start killing people, and did he intend to also unalive anyone after killing the 4? Because in his mind, he thinks he had gotten away with it. That's what the thumbs up is about. And I won't doubt he would have committed more crimes had he not been arrested in Pennsylvania. And I don't see his family testifying that they bought that knife, because in the end, if you say, yes, I bought the knife, the K-bar knife, the prosecution is going to ask you, well, where is it? I need you to produce the knife. And you can't. You can't produce it. You'd have to go out and buy one similar to say, oh, I've always had it here. And that would not be the truth. It would not be the original knife ordered on that Amazon account. How many relatives are going to testify on behalf of Mr. Korberger? What will their testimony reveal about them, their relationship with the son, brother? And why did he kill these kids? Will we ever find out the truth? Probably not. How many witnesses will testify? Don't know. What I did find interesting, I don't know why this slipped my mind, or I hadn't even heard, this case is in Boise, Idaho. So the defense got their wish to get it out of the town where it took place. But I won't doubt that there are people in Boise and surrounding area, whoever's chosen as a jury member, that they have heard this story, because Idaho is not a big state. And I'm sure many people in Idaho have heard the story about the Idaho 4. And I just pray that they get a sound jury and they listen to the evidence and they judge the evidence accordingly. And naturally, there's probably more that we don't know. We're just getting little bits and pieces of testimony from the housemates and forensics, conversations, data, text messages. What else is it that we're going to learn pertaining to the roommates who were bludgeoned, Dylan and Bethany, outsiders? Naturally, these other young children are going to have to come in to testify, young people, Emily, Hunter. But it's all still baffling to me, the behavior of these young ladies. I don't care. That's my opinion. And I get it. People don't react the same. But to call other people over to the house, which we had already realized that from years ago with this mishap of who passed out outside, and we realized That's never happened with the new information. We learned even then, you called somebody else instead of calling 911, which never made any sense. That means you had to have fear that something went wrong in that house in order to call 2 other people over. And we thought that was crazy then, some of us. And I still think it's crazy that you can sleep in a house for hours, not even thinking about your own safety. You slept in a house where 4 people were bludgeoned, and allegedly you had no idea that these people were dead. But then now we learned that you did walk past Xana, passed out on the floor, which we now know she was dead, and you ran downstairs to Bethany's room, Dylan. That's baffling to me. And then you call these other people over hours later. You all were up on your phone texting from 7 to almost 12. Doing work, resumes, different things. Bethany calling her father, mother, all this crazy stuff. And then you call these other 2 people over. So that means it was still on your mind hours later. So how much of this drunk factor can you keep using, Mr. Gonzalez? They were drunk, they were drunk, they were drunk. They hadn't even had at least 4 hours of sleep. That's obvious. If you're up at 7 and they're texting people from 4:22 to 4:36, I think most of us can count. You haven't even had 3 hours of sleep until you call these kids over and discover these housemates dead. Stay woke, everybody. And you should be able to smell death. As I said, the heat is on. It's winter. You should have been able to smell death as soon as you woke up, Dylan, Bethany. When Hunter and Emily came over, they should have smelled death. And they should have been able to explain that on the 911 call. I don't think they're passed out, both of them. That was never mentioned at the beginning of that call, which is baffling to me. So all this nonsense about how people react, how people talk, is bullshit. You just saw 2 people in a room and you should have been able to see blood. That's what you should have said on the 911 call. We just left the room. They don't look like they are alive. We also see blood. That was never mentioned in the 911 call. Why not? You cannot judge us for questioning that. This is information that you all are releasing, the attorneys, the DA, to the public. So you can't get mad at people for asking the questions from the information. Because it doesn't make sense. Just like somebody commented below this video saying, why are you rehearsing what you just did when you left the house? You're going back to the 911 call, not really saying what you saw in that house. And the dispatcher is telling them, go back. Check to see if they're alive, but you just left out of there. Make that make sense. All of you all saw these kids, except for maybe the Emily girl. So why, when you get on the 911 call, you just don't say, hey, I think they're dead. They look dead. We touched them. They're not moving. They're cold. They're stiff. We don't need to touch them. We don't need to check. We don't need to check for a pulse. We just saw them. So that's what you have to ask. When he told the girls to get out of there, had he touched the victims, Hunter, touched the leg, touched the arm, touched the forehead, touched the pulse? Because if he had, that's what he should have told the dispatcher. Ma'am, we don't need to go back in there. I've already looked at them. They're stiff, they're cold, they're bleeding. Well, I see blood. They are dead. That's my commentary. Like, share, subscribe. Drop your comments below this video. Take the polls on my community page. And if you'd like to donate to this great network, $McAngie129 Cash App. Stickers and chats are always welcome to the live stream. Thank you for your time. Please check out my shorts. I've done quite a few shorts pertaining to this new information, pertaining to Mr. Korberger. Commentary from Mr. Gonzalez, Maddie Mogan, and also Kaylee'S Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. This Hunter and this Emily, Dylan, and Bethany. I stand on everything I've ever said 2.5 years ago, and I stand on everything I'm saying today. This is a very baffling story, horrific story, and the behavior of these children is bizarre to me. It's just bizarre that these kids didn't know how to talk and explain what they saw to the dispatcher. It's bizarre to me. And nobody can judge a person who is hearing this information. Whether we were there or not, this is all we have to go on, are the words from these people. And in the end, as I've always said about true crime and dealing with people in life in general, everything is a version. And it's up to you to decide if you believe the version that the person is giving. And even in a horrific situation, we have learned that people do not always tell the truth and are not forthright in the information. And I'm not saying that these children are lying about anything. All I'm saying is this story is built on evidence and a version from the people who were at the house. And that's all you have to go on. Burger, charged with 4 murders, 4 students in Idaho. He is eligible for the death penalty if found guilty. Should he get the death penalty? I say yes. Thank you for liking, subscribing. Thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate it. God bless all of you. You have been listening to the Vault XL.